It's Premier League All Access with me, Sam Matterface, Scott Minto, and Alex Crook. Now, yesterday we were all at the same ground. We were at the place of the biggest upset in the FA Cup. The whole weekend was centred on Fulham against Southampton. $1 Million Minto and I were there. So was Alex Crook. We all watched Ross Stewart stick away a 90th minute penalty. Southampton supporters went into raptures. Marco Silva collapsed into his dugout. He looked even more miserable than usual. But no, listeners, that wasn't the biggest shock of the weekend. The biggest shock of the weekend, the upset of the weekend, was the fact that we were all in the same place, yet we didn't go for a post-match debrief. Scott and I did have a little chinwag in the middle of a road, but I didn't even see Alex Crook. Absolutely ridiculous. Can't believe it. What are we playing at?
Well, you were too busy swanning about in the Winnebago with all your TV big heads. You know, you not got enough time for us small people in the actual, old school cramped press box with your grand facilities over in the Riverside stand. Probably went for a swim at half time, didn't you?
Let me just tell you this. First of all, it was Scott and I that were trying to arrange a drink. Scott was quite reasonably trying to organise all of us to get together. Me and Scott did get together, and you completely ignored the both of us. In terms of the Riverside stand, though, I must say it's not all it's cracked up to be. You know, you mustn't read into the fact that there were halftime pies on a silver service tray. There was almost hotel quality toilets at the break where you could go in and just sort of sit down and relax outside in a little lounge before you went in to do your business. Honestly, what a place that is, by the way, but that's for another day. Let's start with a look at all of the FA Cup headlines from the weekend. There were some scares for the big boys, and the magic of the FA Cup was in full force. We are later going to look at what's going to happen in the Champions League this week, because it's an absolutely massive week on talkSPORT. Mansfield 1, Arsenal 2. So Mansfield away. Arsenal packed the silk pyjamas and found out very quickly it was sort of a high-vis jacket and steel toe boots kind of day. Really, it was a heart-in-mouth game at times for some of the Arsenal supporters. I actually thought it was a really terrific contest. 16th place in League One, taking on a Premier League side who have won the Champions League phase. They're top of the table. They're through to the Carabao Cup final. But Mansfield fully embraced it. So did their fans. It was a proper FA Cup occasion, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that this weekend showed what the FA Cup is all about, the magic of the FA Cup. Obviously, we'll come on to Port Vale in a second. And while on Saturday there weren't sort of shocks, but it showed what the FA Cup can give, and it's something different. Mansfield were absolutely brilliant, playing above themselves. Mikel Arteta obviously played a very strong side, just a very different system that in those conditions. And if you're not mentally up for it, then you will get hurt. And in the end, look who we brought off the bench, some of the big hitters, and 2 moments of brilliance in the end from international players, won in the game. And boy, did they need that.
They certainly did. I don't think you can beat those things. The bloke who did the press conference in midweek, Will Evans, talking about the fact that he didn't really have too many FA Cup memories because he was too busy working on the family farm in South Wales. And then he ploughs through the Arsenal defence and scores the equaliser. It's proper FA Cup, isn't it, Crook?
Yeah, that was a proper FA Cup moment and a brilliantly taken goal. And I think in many ways that Arsenal game set the tone for what went on the rest of the weekend. I heard the Port Vale manager, John Brady, speak, and he said, look, you know what, we took inspiration from what Nigel Clough's team did yesterday, because it showed actually that in a one-off game, the EFL teams, even if they're struggling in their own league, as Port Vale clearly are, can go toe-to-toe with the best. I thought it was a wholesome FA Cup weekend. I thoroughly enjoyed the Wrexham-Chelsea game as well. I felt Wrexham deserved the chance of a penalty shootout and would have got one, but for the tightest of offside calls. Obviously, Scott and I were at Craven Cottage with you, as you mentioned, and Fulham made 9 changes. It backfired big time. And I do need to have a little bit of a gripe here, actually, at this stage, and me and Scott disagree about this on air. I was shocked and disappointed when I saw Marco Silva's team sheet, because Fulham are not going down. They're probably not going to get in Europe, because I think there's better teams ahead of them already in the table. But they did have a chance to get within 1 game of Wembley. I don't understand why Marco Silva threw that opportunity away by making so many changes against the Southampton side, who had a far bigger game for them coming up in midweek in the Championship as they try and get in the playoffs. And they only made 4 alterations, and Fulham don't play again until next weekend. You said it in the preview podcast. With so many big teams distracted by European ambitions and trying to win Premier League titles, it does feel like there could be an opportunity for another Crystal Palace, and Fulham have blown it.
Yeah, I think he'll get a little bit of stick, actually. And I was leafing through the papers before we started recording this, and a lot of people talking about the fact, as we did yesterday, that 9 changes probably unnecessary. And then late on in the game, he still hadn't made the substitutions that were probably required to get Fulham over the line, and they paid the price for that. He's going to have to answer to that, because a lot of the discussions have been about, this is a coach who is probably working at a level where he is comfortable, but he can go to the next level, and big clubs are looking at him. However, if you throw away an opportunity like that, I think people will be like, well, what's happened here? Scott, why did he make so many changes, and why did he wait so long to decide to mix things up towards the end when they were chasing the game or chasing a victory?
Yeah, look, I mean, the fact that he's got a full week coming up now, he could have done maybe some, the players, we don't know what the data's saying about, they had, 2 tough games, one against Tottenham, one against West Ham in midweek, and he's making changes. But where I disagree with Crookie is I think that team is full of first team players, and actually should be, if you look at the 2 teams alongside each other, at home, good enough to get through to the next round of the FA Cup. Where I do agree with him and you is the changes, because he had a lot of the big hitters on the bench and he didn't bring them on, enough of them on, and early enough as well, where you're getting to the point where one moment, and we were saying, Crookie, weren't we, in commentary, that this could be a game where 1 goal wins it. And if that goes to Southampton, then they're going to find it very difficult to turn it around, and they did. But I do agree that we know he's a very good manager, but if he really wants to stand out amongst other good managers who are going to be finishing their contract this season, this would have been a great opportunity. And to win the FA Cup, or at least get to the final of an FA Cup, I think would have helped him stand out there. Whereas now, yes, there are lots of people out there, you 2 perhaps included, that can beat him with that stick of, well, look what you did, and now you're at the FA Cup.
We wouldn't do that. I'm a big Marco Silva fan. I think he'll end up doing a good job at Nottingham Forest next year. Wrexham 2, Chelsea 4. A quick word on Wrexham, because their hopes of a giant killing almost came true, didn't they? The scoreline doesn't even begin to tell you exactly what happened at the racecourse ground on Saturday. Wrexham were excellent. Everything they could have dreamed of, really, apart from getting the victory. And they probably deserve something from it, Crook.
Yeah, I think they deserved the penalty shootout. As I say, it was a great moment when they got the equaliser with 10 men in extra time. But to be fair, you only had to look at one replay and you knew he was offside. And it's the first time that VAR, I think, has been used at the racecourse ground. They won't want to see it again, but ultimately the decision was correct. I think the red card probably was the right call as well. When I first saw it, I thought it was a little bit harsh, but I don't think you should really be steaming into a challenge like that. Maybe he just got a bit het up by the occasion. But they certainly did themselves proud, Wrexham. And you know what? I think in some ways Phil Parkinson will be quite relieved they've gone out in the FA Cup, because they can now focus on a playoff place, and they can take a lot of confidence from the fact they've run Chelsea so close.
Yeah, I got a text message actually from a Southampton fan on the full-time whistle, which said, great, now we've got to rearrange all our league fixtures for the FA Cup. And I just thought there is a little bit of that about those teams that are going for promotion, that they're thinking to themselves, actually, we don't need this sort of sideshow. Even though the FA Cup is great for them, they probably think they're not going to win it. So, getting to the last 8 or the last 4 is not as helpful as getting into the playoffs, which is what they really want to achieve. Just a quick word on Chelsea. Casual, lack of seriousness in their approach. They've got some very good players, Scott, but at times you are screaming at the television or screaming from the stands, grow up, because they are too relaxed and almost complacent at times.
Yeah, and look, I understand Liam making changes with the PSG game, coming up so close. Again, the system change, I don't think helps. So when you're chucking in lots of changes and a system change, and you're going away from home to a club that is chasing Premier League football, so is a very good team right now and would be bang up for it with everything that goes on around that football club as well. The players need to be... It's almost as if they just wanted to play at Premier League level And again, that's the beauty of the FA Cup, especially away from home against the lower side. They played at a championship pace. Chelsea tried to play at Premier League pace and got away with it. Absolutely got away with it. But you know what? Again, SAS style, get in there, somehow get the job done, get out, and Chelsea are through to the next round.
Good job they didn't rely on Robert Sanchez to lead them out of whatever bit of stick they were in. Don't get me started on Robert Sanchez. Ego saves and hesitant when it matters most. He waited so long to come off his line for the first goal. I thought there was a VAR check, honestly. And then the ego save with the top of his forearm, which pushes the ball back to Josh Windass and then leaves his whole goal open for Windass to put it back into the net. Obviously, Windass missed the target, but if he'd hit anywhere between the post, it was a goal. I mean, it's just ludicrous. I mean, for a goalkeeper that's been dropped for making too many mistakes to perform in that manner, I just do not understand it, Crook.
No, I think the writing is on the wall now for Robert Sanchez. Obviously, they were briefing in previous transfer windows. They were happy with the goalkeeper department, didn't need to make any reinforcements. They might not make any reinforcements because I'm hearing a lot of noise about Mike Penders at Strasbourg, who obviously is a Chelsea player on loan there, someone who did well under Liam Rosenior. I think he's better with the ball at his feet than Robert Sanchez, and that's clearly the way that Rosenior wants to play. So I certainly think that's the one to keep an eye on for the start of next season, whether Penders comes back to the club and even at the age of 20, maybe comes back as number one.
Yeah, if you watch Mike Penders, he takes a lot of risks with the ball with his feet, and he is good with his feet, but he does also create some chaos as well by doing so because he takes big risks. So, let's see if he can handle that in the Premier League. It's a big thing to do to get a 20-year-old to come into the Premier League with no prior experience and perform, a high-risk strategy. Although, look, Senna Lomans has done very well since coming in for Manchester United. Port Vale 1, Sunderland 0. It turns out 9 lives aren't enough for Black Cats unless you can defend corners. Amazing display by Port Vale and an amazing day as well for their supporters, for Carol Shanahan, who has transformed the club from a toxic sort of toiling outfit that no one was interested in the area to one that has sort of reconnected the club with its supporters, doubled its attendances, landed an FA Cup quarter-final. They've had promotions. They've had a relegation and another promotion. But look, I've been there twice this season. It's a brilliant, brilliant football club, and they've got the best kit in the league, the 150th anniversary kit, which has got nothing on it apart from the big black collar. It has a sort of whiteout of the Port Vale badge and the sponsors and all that kind of stuff. It just is absolutely beautiful. I love kits anyway, as you know, and that's an absolute belter. But the best thing was Ben Waine, the Newcastle supporter, celebrating in front of the Sunderland fans with the trademark Alan Shearer celebration, Scott. Love that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he said his family were watching at silly o'clock, over in New Zealand as well. So they would have been very proud of him. Were there any Port Vale fans telling you, oh my goodness, we've got to rearrange the Easter Sunday and Easter Friday games and they're already 3 games off Blackpool, so they've got to catch up and they're bottom of League One. Look, this is what the FA Cup is about. My goodness, that pitch, worse Sunderland up for it. You can't really blame Regis Lebris because he had a couple of players suspended. Yes, he had Granit Xhaka was on the bench, but he's only coming back from injury. Apart from that, it was pretty much a full-strength side. That was the FA Cup that I recognised back in the day, and I thought it was brilliant. We almost saw an incredible own goal in that game as well. So I'm just really pleased for Port Vale. It looks like they are going to go down, so why not earn a bit of money and get a bit of glory? And I thought I listened on talkSPORT actually to the chief exec, and she was sort of saying, look, it's about staying in the game. It's a game of snakes and ladders. We know that some seasons you'll go up, some seasons you go down, but it's about staying in the game. She sounded really realistic about where the club is at. So it's well run. They'll go down, hopefully pocket a lot of money, and then hopefully next season come back up.
Yeah, they obviously understand the local community, the Shanahans, Kevin and Carol Shanahan, have been in charge since 2019. Terrific people. They've got the club at heart, the community at heart. And I think it's a great moment for community ownership, for local people being involved in the local football club. And it's a great moment for those supporters who have been success-starved. Let's move on to the midweek Champions League action now as the heavyweights go to the continent. Tuesday night sees Galatasaray and Liverpool clash. It's 5:45. Galatasaray have been wildly entertaining in Europe. 10 Champions League games so far, with an average of nearly 2 goals scored and 2 goals conceded. Victor Osimhen is a frightening prospect for the Liverpool defence to deal with. They are in pole position to take their 4th consecutive Turkish league title. How difficult is this trip going to be for Liverpool, Scott?
I think, well, you need to ask them earlier in the season to know how difficult it'd be, and they might even take that result of 1-0. I think this game, I mean, first legs very rarely decide a two-legged affair. I think this one could. If Galatasaray do what they did to Juventus, I'm not sure Liverpool will come back, although they are really poor away from home. If Liverpool can somehow get a draw out of it, or maybe just 1 goal behind, going to Anfield. I mean, I was speaking to someone. Funny enough, my hairdresser is a big Galatasaray fan, and he was talking about the passion that they have, and I think we all know about that. And you've got 2 football clubs here where, when they're playing in European nights, if anyone can't handle that kind of atmosphere, then they will get found out. I think if Liverpool can go there and not lose by more than 1 goal, I fancy at Anfield them to take over. But I do worry for this particular game for Liverpool, because I worked in the Wolves game in the FA Cup, and look, they were good, and Andy Robertson was absolutely brilliant, especially to start that second half. So that will give them a lot of confidence. But this is still a Liverpool side that's a million miles away from last season. So this first leg is going to be really important.
Yeah, so what you're saying is your Turkish barber told you that it could be a close shave.
Ah,
They absolutely stunned Juventus, scoring a load of goals. Has that Liverpool defence got the propensity to be able to keep Galatasaray at bay in that hostile environment? Because there have been a couple of occasions this season where we've seen them collapse.
Yeah, but there's also been a couple of occasions where they've gone away from home in Europe and you think they're going to struggle, and actually have done quite well. So it's a difficult one to gauge, really. I was intrigued by the team selection at the weekend. He went a lot stronger on a slot than I expected him to in terms of the starting lineup. Obviously, Ekitike was left in cold reserve. So was Kanate. Wirtz has come on for the last 20 minutes. But apart from that, it was pretty much a Liverpool first team, which told you the importance of getting back to winning ways in Slot's mind after losing to Wolves in the league. Will they keep Galatasaray out? I don't think so. I think Galatasaray will score. I think Victor Osimhen is a terrific player, and it's always puzzled me why no Premier League club has ever shown serious interest in bringing him to this country, because when it comes to an old school number 9, I think he's just about the best there is out there. It can only be attitude or maybe his wages that have proved the blockade. So I think they'll concede Liverpool, but I think Galatasaray are a team who give you chances as well. So I don't think Galatasaray will win this game handsomely enough for us to say, well, after the first leg, the tie is over. Having said that, a lot of Liverpool struggles this season have come at Anfield, so they could really do with a positive result, I think, in this first leg.
Yeah, it is a hostile place to go, that is for sure. And it's live on talkSPORT 2 on Tuesday afternoon, 5:45 kickoff. Atletico Madrid against Spurs is also Tuesday night. This is 8 o'clock. Now, this is a very interesting tie, Scott. Atletico Madrid, a bit more open than they are stereotypically billed as. They haven't kept many clean sheets in the Champions League, if any, so far this season. But Spurs are a completely different side in Europe and in the Premier League. Now, which Spurs are going to turn up here, and how much of a distraction is this competition for their ongoing relegation battle?
well, you can only really talk about the difference of Spurs in the Champions League and Premier League when you look at the teams that they played. And don't get me wrong, they played PSG, one of them, and Borussia Dortmund, and played very well against them. But half the teams that they played against didn't even qualify for the playoffs. And with the greatest of respect, wouldn't even be in the Premier League if they were an English football club. So I worry for Spurs. I worry for Spurs on so many levels. And we talk about character. They don't seem to have that at the moment. I think if anyone took away the name Tottenham Hotspur and just looked at how the teams down in the bottom of the Premier League have been playing, I'm pretty sure 9 out of 10 people would say Spurs are going down. It's only because it's Spurs that we don't believe they can go down. Now, and there's been no manager bounce. So there's no Premier League win in 2026. There's been no manager bounce. They're going to a place where, yes, they're not quite the Atletico Madrid of a few years ago, but we talk about hot atmospheres. This would be fantastic. I cannot wait for this game. I've not been there before, and I'm really looking forward to it. I worry for Spurs a lot over these 2 legs, over the Forest game. I worry for Igor Tudor that he's not even going to last the season. There's nothing positive to say about Tottenham right now, but somehow they have to find a way to try and get even a draw or a goal behind. But even at home, you wouldn't trust them to overturn a 1-goal deficit. I'm really sorry, but there's almost nothing I can say that's positive about them.
Well, I think that the Opta analyst prediction models, the supercomputer, has suggested now that they believe that Tottenham will stay up. I mean, I think that's sort of based on the fact that the other teams aren't going to get as many points, and over the course of the season, things will even out for Tottenham. I mean, we've gone through the fixtures several times, all of us, and we can't find too many positives for them and where they're going to pick up points. And Crook's pretty certain that they're not going to pick up points when they go to Molineux. They've got Nottingham Forest to play at home. They go away to Liverpool in between the 2 legs of this competition. So I suppose it begs the question, really, is what lever is there left to pull? I think we've asked that question consistently over the last couple of weeks. And the only one really is the fact they have to change, or they could change, the manager again. What is the possibility of that, Crook? Because we heard a lot of whispers actually in the build-up to the Crystal Palace game that he might be under threat. There was a little briefing that I noticed that you broke as a story over the weekend where you said he continues as the manager for now, basically. So what is the latest update?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. He'll be in charge for this game. I'd imagine he'll be in charge for Forest at the weekend. But if they lose them both, I don't think it's a given that he'll be in charge for the second leg, because you're right. They can't sign a whole load of new players. They can't magically get James Maddison and Dejan Kulusevski back from injury. The only thing they can do is write what I think is a disastrous appointment. I don't want to say I told you so, but I never saw this working out. I didn't understand how they stumbled upon Igor Tudor. When you look at his CV, someone who doesn't know anything about English football, someone who clearly is quite a disciplinarian of a manager. That dressing room didn't respond to Thomas Frank, who was quite a touchy-feely, softly kind of guy, so they certainly weren't going to respond to this bloke coming in for the final few games of the season. They need an arm round the shoulder, dare I say it, a Harry Redknapp type character. I don't think that will happen. I think Robbie Keane would be far more likely if they do make a change, but I'm with Scott. I can't see any positives from the Igor Tudor appointment. I can't give Tottenham fans too much hope for this game in the Spanish capital. And what's really interesting, actually, is a good friend of ours who's gone over there to watch Tottenham. He posted this morning, this is a brilliant city, but I just can't get infused for this game. I don't know when Tottenham will be back at this kind of table again. And it's an unwanted headache when they're fighting relegation. So I think even the mood in the travelling Tottenham fans is going to be quite negative come Tuesday night.
Well, it's likely to be more negative by the time that they finish the game. Alexander Sorloth, the top scorer in all competitions, is a real danger in the air. Julian Alvarez, main supplier, but poses a serious threat on transition as well. Mickey van der Ven and Romero could be reunited for the first time in quite some while. Actually, reunited for the first time in a while, and then obviously disbanded again because Van der Ven is suspended for the game against Liverpool. That might give them an extra little bit of protection, so they might come away with a damage limitation in the Metropolitana. But it is a brilliant stadium. Scott, you will really enjoy it, especially if you get to go pitch side and just walk around the sort of perimeter of the pitch, because you get to feel the sort of the enormity of the bowl of the stadium that comes on top of you. And when you're in that stadium, I imagine as a player, it's really sort of quite intoxicating. Do you know what, though? There is a little bit of me that wants Igor Tudor to work out just so that Crook isn't right. Do you know what I mean? Because he was pretty strong on it right from the very beginning. Unfortunately, I mean, we were all a little bit skeptical. We were all asking the question, sort of, is this the right decision, bringing someone in who doesn't know anything about the league? It seems a bit strange. Do they need a firefighter? But Crook was so hard on it that he's claimed it as his own, that he had sort of put the hex on Tudor right from the very beginning.
How damning is it that we're talking about he that sort of character won't get the players on board, and Thomas Frank is a good person, and yet he sort of lost them. Hate that phrase. they've lost the manager or lost the players. I mean, what does that tell you about these particular players? And that's why I worry for them. I really feel for the Spurs fans. I didn't think Igor Tudor certainly wasn't my number one, but I looked at what he could do and what he has done. He may not know the English football, but principles are still the same about making yourselves difficult to beat, working hard, outrunning the opposition. And he's come in, and within a couple of games, he's looking like he's never managed a game ever in football. He comes from a really tough place, by the way, from where he comes from. And he would love to pin them up against the wall, I'm pretty sure. But the fact he's lost them already is just embarrassing for the Spurs fans. I'm really sorry. And maybe it's either they got bad attitude or they just can't handle the heat. It's a different mentality when you're down there. But I don't even think he's going to last past that Forest game, to be honest with you. And as I say, that's all damning for the players and actually even more so for the owners.
And it leads into the narrative of one Twitter wag who said it's probably going to be the shortest Tudor reign since Lady Jane Grey. Right, let's move on to Newcastle against Barcelona. Let's have a quick word on that. That's also Tuesday night. This is the home game. Obviously, with the others are in a situation where they're all going away first and then having the second leg at home. But Newcastle are the outlier because they came through the playoffs. They go to Barcelona. How difficult is that going to be, because Barcelona have been up and down, and so have Newcastle, Scott?
Yeah, and I looked at Newcastle, and I thought for the first 20 minutes of that City game in the Cup, I thought they were brilliant. But I thought City were absolutely sensational in that particular game, and as Eddie Howe said, they just couldn't keep it up. And in the end, it wasn't even sort of last 20 minutes; it was before then, wasn't it, that Newcastle ran out of gas. This is a really interesting one for me. I was having a chat with Crookie on air about you, funnily enough, with talkSPORT, and he was saying that you said that Newcastle will win this over 2 legs.
Did I say that? I don't think I did.
Well, go on. I'll let you two fight it out. But this is one of those where I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to really enjoy the way that both teams play. This is not a Barcelona. It's not a vintage Barcelona. They've got a very good win at the weekend in Bilbao, and they're top of La Liga, but I do think they can be got at, especially with that high line. So Newcastle quite simply have to be brilliant. They got hurt earlier in the season against them. I don't fancy them to go over 2 legs, but I do think this game would be, they've got to have a 2-goal lead, I think.
I think what I said is that they can beat them. And the reason that they can beat them is because of the way that Barcelona play, which is, as Scott has already identified, that really high line. They've got brilliant creative talent. In Rashford, Yamal, Rafinha. They've got a super amount of goals in that team. However, their defence is a little bit ropey. And because they play so adventurously and they're completely wedded to one style of play, Eddie Howe, who's a brilliant coach, and I always back Eddie, I think will find chinks in that armour, as he did actually during the game earlier in the season, and they were undone by 2 moments of absolute brilliance from Marcus Rashford. So I think they can win it. Will they win it? That's a different matter. But I think that speed with Gordon, Barnes, Elanga or Murphy, whoever you choose, will cause some problems for Barcelona, I think, Crook.
Yeah, defensively, I mean, I was at the game at Stamford Bridge when Barcelona got absolutely destroyed with that high line, probably one of Chelsea's best performances of the season. But I just don't think Newcastle are in that vein of form at this moment in time, particularly at home. And this first leg at home is so crucial. They need a lead to take to the Camp Nou. I mean, no doubt about that when you look at their away form over the course of the season. But before beating Manchester United, I think they'd lost 3 in a row at St James's Park. We both fancied them to beat Man City at the weekend, and probably even more so when you saw the Man City team sheet. But they got blitzed in the end, and there are too many players underperforming. You mentioned Elanga, Voltemada in midfield, I think is an experiment that clearly is not working. Defensively, they're a team now all of a sudden are giving away chances. Johan Wissa did nothing when he came on and went up top, and that's been a signing that hasn't worked out. So I just think Newcastle have got too many issues to rally themselves to the level they're going to need to beat this Barcelona team over 2 games. I think they'll lose the first game at St James's Park, and that makes it very difficult going into the second leg.
Yeah, I mean, the problem that you've got is when the draw was made, I think they'd won 3 home games in a row, Newcastle, and they were on the up, and then they've subsequently not played very well since then, and that is an issue. I back Eddie a lot, but they've had a very difficult season in terms of consistency of performance. There's been some games where they've been brilliant and they've made brilliant opportunities and they've beaten good teams, but there have been other games where they've let themselves down a little bit, and the recruitment has been a little bit off, hasn't it, this season? Let's move on to Wednesday night's games. Bayer Leverkusen, Paris Saint-Germain and Real Madrid in wait for the big Premier League giants. First up, Bayer Leverkusen take on Arsenal back in the knockouts again. They've come through the league phase. Bayer Leverkusen, they're a little bit more pragmatic than they were under Alonso. They're still a proactive possession side, but they're just a little bit more handbrake on than they were under the former Real Madrid manager. Kasper Hjulmann's done a pretty good job there after taking over from Erik ten Hag. What about Arsenal? Does the sort of Saturday game away at Mansfield, the fact that they made as many changes as they did, mean that they can unleash all of their top-level stars? What's a good result here, Scott?
I think a good result is don't get beat. Make it a one-off at the Emirates. And it's exactly what he tried to do with that team that he selected at the weekend. Look, Arsenal have been fortunate, I think, with sort of draws and that, but it doesn't matter. You just beat the team that's in front of you. Leverkusen, you're right, are a million miles away from the Xabi Alonso side. I mean, they're 22 points off Bayern Munich right now, and they conceded 3 at the weekend. So I do feel that the way Arsenal play, they don't look tired at the moment. I think that's, one, the home fans. We've discussed that in previous pods. But 2, are they tired? And with the squad that they've got and the rotation that he's done and the mentality they've now got, I don't see Arsenal. I genuinely don't see Arsenal, if they're bang on it, having any problems over 2 legs here. It might not be a 3-4 goal difference, but I can see them being in control in both games, away as well as at home.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that he's criticised so much for not rotating the team enough in previous seasons. He has rotated it a little bit more, sometimes not as much in key positions, but he did obviously at the weekend, which gives them a sort of freshness. No Declan Rice, he was given the weekend off. Zubimendi, who needed the weekend off desperately, was allowed to stay in London over the weekend. He's run more than any other player in the Premier League this season. He's going to be crucial, and that partnership is going to be crucial to them getting through past Leverkusen, because disrupting the possession style that Hjulmann craves is going to be vital for an Arsenal success. Be interesting to see how he goes up front, whether or not the former Leverkusen player Kai Havertz is allowed to start this game, or whether Gyökeres will be back. I would imagine the big Swede is given the responsibility of trying to break them down.
Yeah, I'd have thought so. We've seen the sort of best and worst of Victor Gyökeres recently. Obviously, he was brilliant in the North London derby at Spurs. I thought he was atrocious in that game at Brighton when they scraped to that 1-0 victory at Arsenal. I think Arsenal's biggest issue when it comes to the Champions League is complacency, because we've all basically said they've got one foot in the final because the draw has really opened up for them. They're on the easier side of it. But don't underestimate Leverkusen. They've already won at Manchester City this season, one of the surprise results in the league phase. Yes, maybe they caught City at a good time. I think Pep made a lot of changes to the home team. But what we know about Kasper Hjulmand from his time at Denmark is that he regularly is a manager who is able to punch above his weight and get results that maybe his team shouldn't. So this is a dangerous fixture. I think Arsenal will come through, but I agree with Scott. If they get a draw, they'll be happy. If they get a narrow victory, I think they'll be absolutely delighted in this first leg.
Paris Saint-Germain against Chelsea is Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. I'm going to this one, actually, and Chelsea's roller coaster season continues, doesn't it? Because they weren't very good against Wrexham in the game on Saturday night, and now they've got to go to the European champions, who themselves were bad at the weekend against Monaco, giving away goals galore. Look, I've done them actually a bit this season, PSG, and I don't think they're very good in comparison to where they were last year. Now, everyone keeps saying, yeah, but they weren't very good until they got to the knockouts last year. Well, it's not actually true. They got better towards the end of the league phase and ended up winning against Brest 10-1 in the playoff. They almost went out. In fact, they should have gone out against Monaco in the previous round, Scott. And if it hadn't have been for some indiscipline by Golovin and by Koulibaly, then they would have probably gone been knocked out in that round. So I think that they've got a lot of work to do as well. I think it's a fascinating game, and it's a bit of a 50-50 for me.
Do you know what? I'm with you on this as well. And I look, this time last season, PSG were already starting to step up the gears, and they're not at the moment, as you say. That loss to Monaco at the weekend on Friday night, they've got a bit of extra time to recover. But this is not, at this moment in time, this is not the PSG side that went through the gears and became the best team in Europe. And I do think they can be got at. I think, whatever you say about rotation with, first of all, Enzo Maresca and Liam Rossigna, it's almost the same for Luis Enrique in terms of there hasn't been that summer off. And it's been just completely non-stop. What you would say, the pace of Ligue 1 is not the same as the Premier League. But the bottom line is this is not the same PSG side of the end of last season. And I think Dembele, he's not a shadow of the player that he was last season, but he's not the player he was. There hasn't been a lot of signings coming in. So they just look a tired team at the moment. So if Chelsea can control the game somehow, and again, we talk about what's a good result, well, not getting beaten by more than one, then I think Chelsea are very much in this tie. And this would be almost a marquee moment for Liam Rossigna if they are able to get through PSG. What everyone sees as the best team in Europe, and certainly were last season. If he finds a way to do that over two legs, if we can get back to that performance, which obviously wasn't under Liam Rossigna, that Barcelona one that Crookie alluded to, the Napoli one was a really good one. They're going to need something similar to that. I think Chelsea have a chance here.
Liam Rossigna will never get the credit that he deserves, even if he does do a good job, because there's just a narrative about him. But the fact is that if you go back and analyse some of those results that you've already mentioned, he has already put his imprint on this team and probably deserves more credit than he's actually getting. And if he does get through PSG, then certainly he needs more than just a round of applause. I expect this to be a wild two legs. I don't expect it to be 0-0 and cagey when we go to Paris, and I certainly don't think it'll be like that at Stamford Bridge. I think it'll be a shootout, and PSG will probably think they've got more weapons than Chelsea. Vitinha, Kvaratskhelia, Dembele if he's fit, because he's been struggling a little bit with injury on and off over the course of the season. Barcola, Gonzalo Ramos. They've got a lot of weapons in that team that can really cause you some serious grief. But so have Chelsea. And Chelsea have this propensity to turn up and beat big teams. And of course, in the back of their mind, they will remember that they were the team that stopped them from becoming world champions. And that's why they've got that little gold disc on the front of their shirt that Crook loves so much.
No comment.
You don't like it?
No
you don't
comment.
Want to get one? You don't want to get one in front of your little Masters t-shirt that you're wearing today?
Well, the difference between the Masters and the Club World Cup is that all the best players turn up at the Masters every year, don't they? Whereas, some of the top teams, the English champions weren't at that tournament. Barcelona weren't at that tournament. So, yeah, I'll stick with the golf.
Do you know why that is? It's because you have to be European champions in the previous 4 years to qualify for the World Club Cup. And neither of those teams were. But Chelsea were, because they won the Champions League. You remember what that was like, don't you? I think you've done it about, what?
How did Inter Miami get there
ago?
again? What was the qualification process for them?
Well, I was talking about Chelsea. I don't know who you were talking about. You can pull out whoever you want. But the fact is that Chelsea did win the Champions League, and that was their qualification process. Real Madrid win the Champions League on a regular basis. They also constantly bump into Manchester City. Are you excited by this game, Crook?
Listen, yes, because it's two juggernauts going head to head. But I understand why even Manchester City fans are a little bit bored of the Bernabeu, and I get that sounds a little bit entitled when you look at where they were not that long ago, Manchester City, but they seem to pull each other out every year, don't they? There have been some titanic tussles between the two. Real Madrid will want revenge for City going there and doing a job on them in the league phase. And much like PSG Chelsea, I think this is too close to call. I think City probably are a better team than Real Madrid if they play at their absolute peak, as we saw against Newcastle at the weekend. But they do make a habit of giving away goals and silly results like the one we saw against Nottingham Forest. So I don't know how he's going to go. I would make City narrow favourites over the two legs, but I'm not sure I'd stake my mortgage on it.
again, for Real Madrid, they've been inconsistent this season. Changing coach mid-campaign is not something they do very often. They stumbled domestically. They are chasing a 16th European crown, but I watched them last year in this competition, watched them this year in the competition. They're a team that don't want to play with the structure that Xabi Alonso was trying to give them. Arbeloa has given them a little bit more freedom. I watched them against Monaco, and they won that game. I think it was 6-1, I think they won the game. But they were so loose at the back, they could have conceded 3 or 4. And if Manchester City are on it, they will score in the Bernabeu. And I think Manchester City should go through over these 2 legs, Scott.
I agree. I don't think this is a very good Real Madrid side, although a not very good Real Madrid side is still a very good normal side. But my point is, I think City are starting to purr now. And obviously that's just come reasonably soon off that draw against Nottingham Forest. But I thought the performance against Newcastle was almost City at their best, and they just need to do that on a consistent basis. Can they be got at a little bit on the counter attack, on the transition? Yes, but do they look a little bit safer than they have been over the last 12 months? I think so. And like the top players, they're absolutely bang up for this. I mean, that does sound pretty entitled that Man City fans are bored of going to the Bernabeu. I mean, it's going to be my first time. I'm really looking forward to it. But I'd love to have gone there 20 times because it's one of the most iconic stadiums in world football. I don't think they're great defensively. I think Trent has done well to come back in. We'll see whether he starts, but he can still be got at defensively. I think it depends whether Mendy starts or not at left back. But the game that I did against Benfica, I thought just from a defensive point of view, Rudiger was holding them together. And I think if City go at it in the way that they can, then I fancy City to get a very good result. This is another one that I think you were just saying about the Chelsea PSG. There's no way it's 0-0 in either game. There's both teams are going to score in both legs. It's just the question is how many.
Okay, let's play a little game then. How many English teams are going to be in the last 8 of the competition? This is the last 16. So there are 6 English teams, unprecedented, in the last 16. How many are going to make it through to the quarterfinals? Crook?
3.
Who are they going to be?
Actually, 4. Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea and Arsenal.
Okay. Scott?
Yeah, I was going to say that, but I was going to caveat it with a little bit of that is my Chelsea, heart in there as well. I think if anyone thinks this is a bad PSG side, it's not. But I'm going to go with Chelsea. I'm going to go with the same teams as Crookie, 4.
4. Okay. Well, I wanted to do the same as Crook and the same as Scott, but I can't do that because that would be a waste of time. So I'm going to go 5. And I'm going to go all of the 4 that you've suggested, plus Newcastle to beat Barcelona.
There you go. Told you said they'd win.
On block. I didn't say it, but I'm saying it now. By the way, you can't go on air when I'm not there and make a case for something that I haven't said and argue against it. That's not fair, is it? Really? You can't make up that I said something and then argue against me when I'm not there. Which you won't do or care about because you're, one of these new breed of broadcasters or politicians that just say whatever you want and that becomes true. Anyway, lovely to speak to you. Sorry I didn't get to see you yesterday. Scott, thank you very much. Appreciate that. We'll be back on Thursday to review all of the Champions League action and look ahead to another busy week in the Premier League. We've got a massive week in the Premier League next weekend. Make sure you join us for that as Manchester City go to the London Stadium. And of course, there's that big game between Tottenham and Liverpool, which we will follow closely on Game Day Live. This is talkSPORT's Premier League All Access. Make sure you tell all your friends about us and give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts.